Welcome to Messy Liberation, the podcast that dives deep into feminism, business, and personal growth. I'm Becky Mollenkamp.
And I'm Taina Brown. Get ready for another messy conversation through the eyes of two intersectional feminist coaches.
Let's get messy. Hello. How are you today? Well, here's the problem, Taina. We have a podcast. People have to hear you say hello. You can't just wave.
I'm finishing my toast.
Good morning. Good afternoon.
Afternoon, yeah, it's 1 o'clock.
Yeah, it is kind of late now.
Morning for me. I barely woken up.
Well, welcome to the day. How are you
Yeah,
doing?
God, I've been better. I've had a really rough night.
Oh, anything you want to talk about or move on?
I just was insomnia. Yeah. So,
Well, have you anything you want to talk about?
I don't know.
State of
I
the
don't know.
world? Or should we talk about something less terrible?
Yeah, I don't know.
The problem with talking about the state of the world on a podcast that runs 3 or 4 days after we produce it is it changes so much. It's wild. Like, we're at war with Iran. We're not at war with Iran. We've invaded a country. Oh, we've moved on to something else. You just can't even talk about like what's happening with current affairs because they are so current.
Well, I hope anyone who is listening or watching understands that we are not a news podcast.
I think they do. But I'm just saying by the time they listen to it, they're like, yeah, that's already over.
Yeah.
Trump's already tacoed and we've moved out of that war and into something.
Because sometimes you pop in with something and I'm like, I haven't even heard about that.
Well,
like, I
that's
haven't even heard about
interesting.
that. Yeah. But I don't
Well,
watch a lot of news. So
we could talk a little bit. We could do our little favorite. Let me check threads and tell you what's trending, and you can see if you have any thoughts about
ooh,
it.
yes, let's do live reaction.
First of all, how about this? Usher called Sean Combs, P. Diddy, Puff Daddy, whatever million names he had, a legacy
Mm,
in an interview, saying he had nothing negative to say about him. He acknowledged his
That's
He
interesting.
acknowledged his, quote, flaws, but said his experience differs than public perception. This could be an interesting line of talk because I see this happen a lot. Now, in this case, it happens to be two black men, but I see this very often among white folks. And also, I see this happen with women talking about other women. When women step forward talking about abuse, also when men step forward talking about abuse, when someone comes out to say this person harmed me, whoever that is, we see so often where people will say, and this can even be the I believe all women crowd, who suddenly are like, well, that wasn't my experience. I think that they're great.
Yeah.
I've had great experiences with them. And that can be really harmful in that it makes that person who's come forward, it is gaslighting them. It is making them feel question themselves. It's
Mhm.
making them feel not seen, not heard, not validated. It is challenging for then making other people not want to come forward because they're
Mhm.
afraid they're going to be met with these, like, basically supporting the abuser. And here's our big and, it can be very challenging when you're on when you are that person who's had a very specific experience with a person to hear something that sounds so
Out of character.
unbelievable to your own experience that it can
Yeah.
be challenging to then say, I'm going to cut off this relationship, or I'm going to,
Yeah.
whatever it might
Yeah.
be.
Yeah.
So that could be something interesting to talk about because I think many of us have had that experience. And what do you do when you have something like that come up in your life? It can be really, really hard these are those murky waters that can be difficult to navigate.
Yeah. It is. And I have a lot of thoughts.
Maybe not in the case of P. Diddy though, but go ahead.
I mean, I don't have any super specific thoughts about P. Diddy.
Yeah.
I do have some thoughts of just about those types of situations.
Mhm.
Have you ever known someone who, and this is a question for you, Becky, have you known someone or do you know someone who's ever been um accused of causing any kind of physical harm to someone else?
Yes. I don't want to get too deep into my
Yeah,
personal
yeah.
experiences in this particular story or in this particular line of talk. I'm trying to think of something that's less personal, and I can't at the moment. If something comes to me that's a little less close, then
Yeah.
I would offer more of that. But in this particular case, these are things that involve family in a very close way and people who've passed and things that I just
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get it. And I'm not asking you to share
yeah.
any specific
Right.
details.
The answer is yes. I have very much
Yeah.
experienced that where I have known somebody who has been accused of something, of causing harm to someone, and being that person who has also In one case, had a very different experience, another case fully understood.
Yeah. 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 And I think given the statistics that we know about how often physical and even more specifically sexual harm is caused to people, I don't think anyone can accurately say that they don't know anyone who's ever been accused of or not accused of, but has caused actual sexual harm to someone else.
And even if you don't, you do.
And exactly, exactly. Like even if it hasn't been disclosed to you, statistically speaking, the chances are very, very slim that you don't know anyone who's done something like that, which is scary to think about.
Right.
But
And saying that you know somebody who's been on the other end of
yes, who's
receiving that.
has received it. Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, I am have a close relationship with someone who has been accused of that wrongfully. And so, but like you said, like it's one of those things where it's like when that comes to light, you're just like, that's not the person that I know. But there's always like, well, at least for me, like there was a period of like reflection of like, how well do I know this person? Do I know this person as well as I think I do? And
And how well can we ever really know
really
anyone?
know someone.
Anyone.
So unless there's like hard evidence, which in my case there was hard evidence that it was untrue. There's there's I feel like there could just always be that lingering doubt, you know? And so you kind of have to decide which I think you have to decide which relationships take priority, right?
And
Like
that can be really, really challenging.
it can. And I think there's a difference between saying that wasn't my experience, so I don't see how that could have happened, and that wasn't my experience. Full stop. Right? And so I think I'm not as quick to, or not as quick, but I'm not as keen to say, that if someone responds with that was in my experience, that it is gaslighting, because everyone's experience with an individual is different. Like that could be their reality, right? But I think it's a fine line between saying that was in my experience and then that turning into gaslighting.
And to "I don't believe you," or that there's no way
Yes,
that happened,
exactly, exactly, and I think
which
the
we
bigger
see.
your platform, the finer that line becomes, right? Because there's power and influence in the way that you talk about things. And
Yes.
so,
And
I
in the
mean,
case of P. Diddy, just to be clear, he is currently serving a 50-month prison sentence for transportation for prostitution. So and we have seen actual video evidence of him harming at least
yeah,
one woman. I mean, there's probably more, and I don't follow that stuff, and I've seen it.
yeah,
Not to harp on him, but yes, there is a difference then to say, "Well, my experience differs than whatever." And I do think it's fair to say I had a different experience with him, but I think in the case of something like this, where and whether it's a P. Diddy and that
or
or
just some
someone in your
random
life who's
Joe
now in
Schmo, yeah,
right, who's in jail for it, or
yeah,
be factual that they did something to someone else, I think it's very important to not just say my experience differs, but to say my experience differs and I stand with those victims, or and I
mhm,
honor what's happened to those
yeah,
victims, right?
yeah,
That's a
absolutely,
different, and there wasn't that. Usher didn't wanna say any piece of that negative, and
yeah.
I think that's probably where it becomes a problem.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I think there's a lot of layers here. I think like this isn't like we can't just talk about this specific situation in the context of just like the harm that was done, right? Like we also have to consider like these are two black men,
Well,
right?
yeah.
Who who have grown up and lived in a world where black men are historically have been incredibly wrongfully accused to their death.
How many men have been
How
yes.
many,
That we
right?
see come out of prison at either right before they were gonna die or,
Yeah.
after spending
Yeah.
20, 30
Yeah.
years in there. I mean, we
For
it happens all the
for
time.
hundreds of years now. For
For
hundreds
crimes
of
they
years
did not
now,
commit
right?
and
That's
only
been a thing.
yeah.
But it's also been a thing that there's a sense in or there's kind of a way that because of the harm done by things like false accusations and the over policing of black bodies, there's such a distrust of anyone outside of the black community. often, which isn't misplaced, but it can lead to something like this where you kind of close ranks and you are like at any cost, like we're shoulder to shoulder, right? And so I think that's where some of the nuance gets lost. And to be frank, like if I saw a Black person committing a crime, I would probably not call the cops. Like, because the chances of that Black person walking away alive, I know are very slim.
It
Like,
would
there's
depend for
always a
me
chance that
on
they won't.
it would depend on the crime for me, but certainly, did I see you stealing food? No, I did not.
Yeah.
Did I see you stealing gas? Is it theft? No.
Yeah.
Physical harm to someone, perhaps, especially if my doing something about it might be able to stop it from
Mm.
getting worse. But
I'm
yeah,
not
you're
saying
right.
I won't do anything.
Yeah,
I won't call the cops.
right.
I can't say for sure because in that situation, like, I don't know how I would respond, but my first instinct, I will say, I'm pretty confident would be to not want to call the police because it's always a risk. It's always a risk. Now, what kind of intervention I do consider appropriate in that moment, right? That's up for debate. And I think this is where support structures and frameworks like harm reduction come into play, right? Where it's like it's important to have community structures where someone from the community, whether it's like a geographical community or in terms of like closeness of intimacy and relationship, that there's someone that can be called to come in and intervene in a way that isn't going to continue to exacerbate the situation or cause further harm. Those kinds of things are important. And I think that has somehow turned into what we're seeing with how Usher is like talking about um and addressing, right, what's happening with P. Diddy. It's like, well, no, we'll take care of us. But everyone else on the outside, like, y'all don't know what you're talking about, or just stay out of it kind of a thing, right? And so I think that's where it
I
becomes toxic, right?
and
And even more harmful.
as a white person, I generally like when I see stories like this on threads where I have a lot to say about a lot of things, I try to stay out of. I mean, as an example, Jay-Z was just quoted talking about how basically trying to claim he's an ethical billionaire and like leave him alone and all this. And listen, all my thoughts about it, I generally try not to, as a white person,
Yeah.
make comments or direct something at somebody of color and try to like use to call them in. I don't think it's my place to call in somebody who holds different marginalized identities than I hold. I think, as you were saying, I feel like that's a community effort. And if you look at the comments, believe me, his community's taking care of it, right? I don't need to step in. And that's something that we often forget, I think, as we need to look at our privilege as well as our marginalized identities. I may hold marginalized identities, but they're different than his. And it's not my place. It's not my community to be
Yeah.
calling in, right? And we have our lanes and we need to find those. And I agree with what you're saying. Like in this podcast, it was one of the first things I noticed that I thought was an interesting story. But again, I don't necessarily need to speak to Usher and P. Diddy specifically. I thought that the concept behind that is something that we can relate to because you're right. It's not my community to be calling in. You know, I think you might have something to say to Usher. Other folks might have something to say to Usher about how he's talking about that. It's not really my space to talk about that. Now, if P. Diddy had personally harmed me, I might have more of a feeling
Yeah,
about
because
wanting to.
you were then at that point you're brought into the community,
Yeah,
whether
right. Right
it's
now, I'm just an
consensual or
outsider looking
not.
at the story, and
Yeah.
we tend to think this celebrity stuff as it's like it's a TV show that we've been asked to comment on, but that is not the case with celebrities, right? These are actual humans,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they have, for all of the power structures and everything they're playing, those are real. They are still humans.
Yeah.
I just wanted to share one other quick story from Threads also, because it relates to what you were saying about would I call the police? The answer is no, because I was also thinking about just wrongful incarceration is something we have to really think about. Because even if you say, and I did, that he's been convicted, and I think that is important. And right, here's the messy part. And that doesn't necessarily mean that he's wrong and then somebody else, because they weren't convicted, is okay. They didn't do the thing. Because that's just simply not how it works in our
Yeah.
country. And as an example, Alan Richson, who is Reacher on TV, if you've seen that show, he's an enormous white man. And when I say enormous, I mean muscles galore, right? He's like a Dwayne The Rock Johnson kind of a
He's very
body. Like it's
handsome.
a ridiculous body. I'm not into that body type, but like, it's a
I
serious
usually am
body
not
with,
either, but
yeah, there's pecs, there's abs, it's all of it. Okay.
It's the
He's
whole package. It
it's a
can't
work of
just be the
art.
body.
I can appreciate it as art. I wouldn't want to be around it like physically, but whatever. Anyway, he was riding up and down his street, apparently on his motorcycle in some place in Tennessee. Tennessee's a red state. Apparently he has conservative neighbors. What I have learned about Alan Richardson since is apparently he is not wound that way. He has been shown in shirts that have very clear message, anti-MAGA kind of
Mhm,
messages. So he seems to be, anyway, his politics seem to be pretty right on.
mhm.
Driving up and down the street, he's got this older, not old, probably in his, if by the looks of him, 50s, 60s, and Alan Richardson is probably in his 30s. Scrawny little old conservative white man who gets really mad at Richardson for driving his motorcycle up and
Because of
down.
the motorcycle? Because it's loud? They hate
Apparently.
noise. They
And I don't know,
really
maybe
hate
he's popping
noise.
wheelies. I don't know what he's doing. Maybe it's even dangerous. I have no idea. But he starts yelling at Alan. First of all, know your battles. You, little tiny scrawny older white guy, want to go up against this behemoth of a human. Okay. Starts yelling at him, whatever. And apparently he pushed Alan Richardson first, and there was video to show it, but he pushed him and he paid the consequences. He got his ass whooped by this giant man. Now,
That's ballsy.
the cops showed no prior charges were pressed. Alan declined pressing charges against the man who pushed him for pushing him because he started it. They had evidence to show that he wasn't in the wrong. But before that, there's no way they didn't have the videos. When they got there, there was no video evidence they could look at. Here they have one enormous man who's beat up one smaller, older white guy. Had Alan Richardson been Dwayne The Rock Johnson, had he been a black man who was a big, strong, muscular black man like that, who
Yeah.
had now been, the police arrive and it's clear he has now caused harm to this older, frail white man, the story would have looked very different.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know it. In conservative Tennessee, there is no, in most places, the cops are going to come and they're going to take that very muscular black man who has beat up a white man and put him in jail. Now, maybe he would have eventually gotten out because the video evidence and all of that. Again, if there wasn't video evidence and it's his word against someone else's, would the story
Or
look
even
different?
if there is video evidence. I'm thinking of Sandra Bland, who
There
died
you
in
go.
custody when there was video evidence that she wasn't doing anything.
Exactly.
Orlando
Exactly.
Castile.
All the time, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So, yes, it's just those reminders that, like, in the very same news cycle, we have a glaring example of where we can't just take someone either having been charged, gone to jail or not,
Yeah.
whatever, as the evidence of whether we support someone or don't, or
Yeah.
whether they are right or wrong,
Yeah.
right? Because that isn't the evidence. But also, we can't only rely on our own personal experience as a universal truth. And
Yeah.
that can be really hard because
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
I know you to be a way Taina, and if
Yeah.
tomorrow I were to find out that you had been convicted of, eating puppies, I would be like,
God.
I'm trying to think of something that wasn't like, that's
Well, let me
also,
put your mind at ease. I have not been eating puppies.
I know you haven't. I'm trying to think of something less horrific than some examples. That was still pretty horrific,
Yeah.
but I was hoping it was absurdist so that we would know
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But I would be like, that's not the Taina I know. She
Mhm.
doesn't eat puppies. But
Mhm.
also, if the little puppy came up to me with his sad little eyes and said, but she ate my brother, I don't think I would say to that puppy, no, she didn't. There's
No,
no way
she didn't. You're lying. What are you
All
talking
right.
about?
I've never seen her eat a puppy, so she couldn't have eaten your brother. Right. I might actually be inclined to want to do that because I want to defend you because I love you. I
Yeah.
care about you. And that's just not,
Yeah.
it's so left field from what I would know. But I
Yeah.
think that's where we have to pause and really think about what are all the layers of things that could be happening here
Mhm.
and how do I remove my personal feeling? Can't remove them, but how do I honor my personal feelings while also recognizing that they exist inside of a bigger experience?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
so challenging for us to do as
Yeah.
humans.
Yeah. I think part of it is hubris, right? Like we think that what we know is all there is to know. And so when someone challenges that, whether it's in a situation like this, where we're talking about someone, harming someone else, or even just like fucking science, right? Like think about all the MAHA people, like those idiots who don't believe in vaccines or whatever. And,
We're
are
drinking raw milk.
yeah, yeah. Like anytime you come up with like actual scientific evidence that's been proven across generations by study after fucking study, like they assume that they know everything, right?
And they will believe their friend's anecdotal story. Well, my friend had a kid who got a vaccine and then they were diagnosed with autism a year later.
Mhm.
Like
Versus
correlation, causation, right? That versus
versus decades of scientific history and inquiry and, controlled research and so many papers and so much evidence that has disproven those things, right? Not to say, and I think it also kind of goes kind of goes back to the whole idea of just like this binary thinking, right? That like we think in terms of black and white, either or. Like it's so hard for people to wrap their minds around. And when I say people, I include myself in this, right? It's so hard for us to sometimes wrap our minds around the idea that like things aren't usually mutually exclusive. Like the world is complex enough for seemingly opposing things to be true at the same time in the same space. And it's so hard for us to understand that sometimes. It's hard for us to understand that yes, the sun will rise tomorrow, but we actually don't know if it will. We only have evidence that it has in the past. And
It's
so
likely to,
yes,
and something could happen that we don't yet know.
yes, yes, it is likely that it's totally possible that your friend's child got a vaccination and it triggered something in their genetic makeup. But the likelihood of that happening, right? Is it possible? Yes, but is it probable? Right? Like
And how about an even bigger and even if it did, that doesn't then translate into every other
everything.
person's experience and that you then need to change what everyone else has. I think this is just that example of the vaccine. It's like, I think also on the other side of this, for the people who are like quick to judge that person,
Mhm.
I think it's also, and that's me. So I'm speaking to
Yeah,
me,
me too.
right?
I
It's
mean, I just
important
called
for
them
us to,
idiots.
I think the and is, and I can honor that you're hurting,
Yeah,
whether
yeah.
it's because of the vaccine or not, whatever's happening. I can honor that your experience is this thing and it
Mhm,
felt a way to you, whether it's true or not, right?
mhm.
Because what actually happened and how you feel about it are two different things.
Yeah,
But you are having very real feelings and it's very challenging and all of that can be real. So, like, I think part of the problem is because we're so quick to also, the people who are like, it's not binary can also get a bit in a binary where it's like, well, then you should feel this way and you should
yeah,
stop it. You shouldn't be reacting that way. And it's like, can I also then find capacity in my own compassion? And it's challenging for me to honor, like, can I say to you, I bet that hurts. I bet it hurts
yeah,
that that is how you're feeling or that was the experience that you had.
yeah, yeah. And
That
also,
had to have been
like,
hard.
I mean, just are vaccinations the ideal situation for us, for humans remaining healthy? No, like, ideally, we should our bodies should be able to keep us healthy on their own, right?
That would
Like,
be lovely. Yes. Yeah.
that would be lovely, but it's what we have, right? It's what we have to work with, right? Like, is every vaccine gonna be like the best possible scenario for every single person on the planet? No. Like, is every vaccine, like, is every study like 100% accurate? No. Birth control is not 100% accurate, but so many people still take it, right? Because it's the best case scenario
I know
for
people
the
who have gotten
circumstances.
I know people who've gotten pregnant on birth control, and
So do I.
and then I didn't say, "Well, I'm gonna stop taking birth control because it doesn't work."
Yeah.
Hell no, I didn't do that because I know
Yeah.
that's really gonna increase my chances of getting pregnant, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, when I started getting, like, heartburn and, like, acid reflux and all of that, like, water was giving me acid reflux, and I was like I wasn't like, "Well, I'm just gonna stop drinking water because
Or
it's making me wanna throw up."
and you also probably weren't telling every other person, "Hey, you all need to stop drinking water. It causes acid reflux." It's not a
Like,
universal
it just
experience.
boggles my mind, and so and I get it for there are so many levels to this, and like you said, for someone who has had a bad experience with one thing or another, right? Like, there is that personal experience to take into account, but what just burns me is when people just refuse, right, to like come to terms, to come to the table to even discuss, right? Like if you are on the opposite side of what I'm saying, but you're willing to have a conversation with me, like that's one thing. But if you're on the opposite side of what I'm saying and you're like you don't even want to like consider any other alternative viewpoint or possibility, like fuck you. Like who the hell are you to like decide that the truth starts and ends with you? In your viewpoint.
Yeah, well, who we are humans who really have been conditioned into believing we are each the center of our own
Yep,
universe. And in
yep.
many ways, we are the center of our own universe. But the problem becomes where we start to think there are the
That
planets
our
revolve.
universe is everybody else's.
Right. And that the plants are everyone else being the other plants are revolving around us.
Yeah.
They're not.
Yeah.
They're each their own universe with their own planets revolving around them that are not people, right? Like the truth is, we are all part of an ecosystem that is interdependent, right? And what I do has ripple effects that affect the people, the other solar. Mixing all my metaphors, but that interrupt all of the other solar systems around me, right? My solar
Yeah.
system doesn't exist in its own vacuum, and these other people who I think are circling around my planet, they're each circling around their own thing. And when I do something, it can ripple out and affect them.
Mhm.
And we have to
Mhm.
remember that. And going back to the very beginning of this, it can just be very hard
Yeah.
to be able to step outside of your own experience and honor someone else's. We're all very quick, I think, to say like believe all women and mean that, but I think that also, because it's a very binary statement, it's the same to me as many other binary statements I may make, which is like all men. It's all men until it's no men.
Yeah.
It's all white people till it's no white
Yeah.
people. Believe all women, whatever. These kinds of binary statements, what I think we're trying to actually communicate is different than it having to be a binary statement
Yeah.
of like,
Yeah.
because what I mean by that is not, I'm not going to believe every woman all the time. If I see photographic evidence of Nancy Mace telling me she was hit by some trans person, and I see the video and she was not, I'm not going to believe her.
Yeah.
Right? I
Yeah.
don't have to believe her. Um,
Yeah.
and likewise, I could have somebody that I love dearly who's been accused of something. And because of my experience, because of what I know to be true, it may be hard for me to believe that person. I may never actually be able to fully believe this person
Mhm.
accusing them of something. But what I can try to do is find the non-binary approach in that, which is
Yeah.
I can both hold that it's hard for me to believe this. I don't believe it necessarily. And I honor that you are feeling this way and that you have had harm caused to you and that this has been hard for you. And that can feel strange for people. But I
Yeah.
think it can also be true. Like I can believe that Usher could say, again, maybe we shouldn't even bring him into it, but like I can see that world where you could say that is just not my experience.
Yeah.
Again, I think it's helpful to
Yeah.
say the and I honor that there are people who have been
Yeah. Yeah.
harmed.
Yeah. Well, it's like you just said it yourself, right? Where you're just like, it's all men until it's no men, right? Like those statements they have conditions on them,
Right.
right? Like
But they
they're
often get
not
abbreviated to like
they
all
do get
men.
abbreviated, right? But I think part of the reasoning behind the abbreviation is, or one, it's a quick soundbite, right? So it's gonna like
It's more powerful,
it's
I think.
yeah, yeah, it's punchy, right? And so it's gonna get people's attention and it's gonna open up a pathway for a conversation, right? That's what's usually the intention there. But it's also like it's meant to be jarring because the reality of the situation is so dire. It's like desperate times for desperate measures, right? When people say eat the rich, we're not actually fucking talking about cannibalism.
Right.
But those three words elicit a specific type of response that is necessary to engage people. And I think that's what gets lost when we're talking and we're using these abbreviated statements and whatnot. When it comes to like truth, right? There's a difference between like my truth, lowercase t, and the truth, capital case T, right? And this is something that like has come like usually comes up a lot, right? When I'm working with clients and even when I was teaching, like talking to my students about, because we're discussing things like intersectionality and like ways that systems and structures are harmful to the individual, but like to groups of people, right? And so we're like, the lowercase truth might be that like your dad was a cop, your neighbor, that's your quote unquote uncle, may have been a police officer, right? May have been in law enforcement, may have been in the military. The capital case truth is that policing is harmful. It doesn't stop criminal behavior. It just reports criminal behavior and oftentimes perpetuates criminal behavior, right? So
And my lowercase
understanding,
truth really quickly could also be, I've only ever had great experiences with cops.
right, right. Like the police have always been kind to you. They've
Right.
always believed you. They've always
Right.
trusted you. They've always been gentle with you, right? Um, so understanding that your truth and the truth, like that's a Venn diagram, right? Like there might be some overlap there, but they're not one and the same. It's not a flattened perspective. And I think people miss that. Like, they miss that, as we've
For
been saying,
sure.
like,
Well, because we get to that place of feelings versus facts, which is sort of some of that is that truth versus truth, right? Lower in capital T, because it's like if I feel this way or my experience is this, and that becomes this universal truth, and it's
yeah.
just not the case. Before we go, I'm gonna just, if it's okay, unless there's anything else you want to
Hmm.
say on that, I thought I
Mm-mm.
would share another quick one or two things just from threads this week, which is one, Wendy's, which is famous for its like online presence of being
Hmm.
quick-witted. Their social media manager, whoever it is, and I don't know if they've ever been revealed, but very quick-witted, very funny in the comments, always sort of there. People love Wendy's and follow Wendy's just to see all their fun comments and stuff. Well, they apparently came out this week that Wendy's corporate has been supporting MAGA type candidates by
I
a pretty high,
know.
I know, like 70% of their giving, political giving goes to Republicans versus Democrats. So leans very heavy that way. In fact, from one thing I saw, maybe it's even more than Chick-fil-A, right? So Wendy's has lost hundreds of thousands of followers on Threads specifically, probably Twitter. I don't, maybe not
Yeah.
because that's a different world, but in a very short time. And people are talking about boycotting a similar sort of
Hmm.
experience as Target. And that has caused for Target very, very real consequences to their stock price and what's been happening for them. So I just think it's very interesting to see. And I wonder what your thoughts are on some of these, like, because this is now a corporate entity versus like a P. Diddy or whatever, of just the idea of canceling of like where we put our dollars. Because I
Yeah.
mean, I think I don't eat Chick-fil-A, I don't shop Target. I try to be mindful of that. The and being, and most corporations that are giving money to both parties. Now,
Yeah.
how much
Yeah.
goes to each? It depends because they want either party in power to remember them and treat them well.
Hmm.
Right? They want
Hmm.
laws that are gonna help reflect, that are gonna take care of them generally, tax-wise is what we're talking
Yeah.
about,
Yeah.
and so they give to
Financially.
both
Yeah.
parties. Yeah, they give to both parties to try and influence both parties. I think our system of how our politicians are funded, I think we should have public elections, publicly funded elections. I think the way everything's funded is so messed up. Again, it goes to systems issues.
Hmm.
This is a systems issue
Yeah.
more than anything. And there's very, like most places you're going to be shopping, that you're going to be eating, especially when you're talking larger chains and corporate ownership, they're part of the system too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Corporations are shit. And so there's not a lot of places you get around it. That said, I don't need to eat Wendy's, so it's not a big deal. And I
Yeah.
really don't eat Wendy's anyway, so it's not a big deal for me to stop eating there. I unfollowed because that's not a big ask either. But it is interesting. It's sort of like this messy, murky stuff that we don't always talk about, which is like, yeah, that's a problem. And really the bigger problem is, again, at this more systemic level, because all the corporations are playing that game to some degree.
Yeah. 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 I do have thoughts about that. And
Good. I
so,
want to
because I
hear them.
think what we're talking about is like when we get to the nitty gritty of it, it's accountability, right?
Hmm.
And so I think one, when it comes to elections and how they're funded, I've had this idea. I've thought about it this way for the past several years. I think since 2016, actually, where like any money raised by politicians for their campaigns should go back to the people. I think it should be law, like legally binding, that when you raise money, that goes to actual programs and systems and structures that support the people that you're campaigning for, right? Just throwing that out there. How likely is that to happen? Probably not. But when it comes to like canceling people or corporations and the whole thing of like campaigning and corporations donating being a systemic issue, obviously wholeheartedly agree. I think it's impossible to compare, not impossible, but a bit of a false equivalency to compare P. Diddy to Wendy's, because we're talking about an individual accountability versus corporate accountability, right?
Exactly.
So, like, I think on the individual level, right, accountability looks like consequences for actions, right? Repair back to the people, reparations back to the people that were harmed. I think on a systemic wide issue or on a systemic level, accountability can look like canceling, right? Because that affects the financial pockets, right? That affects the finances, that affects quarter earnings, right? That affects all the things that matter to a corporation, right? That's the way they're going to feel the accountability the most. And so I think when it comes to things like cancel culture, like I think cancel culture is for corporations, not for individuals. I think for individuals, accountability needs to really come from a harm reductionist framework for both the person who committed the harm and the person or people on the receiving end of that harm. And so that's where my thoughts lie there. Yeah, I don't know. What are your
I
thoughts on
agree.
that?
I mean, I totally agree, and I think, with corporations, it feels like this is how we as people have some power, is the only power we have in that situation is our
Is with our
pocketbooks.
dollars.
Corporations only speak one language, and their language is capitalism, it's
Yeah.
dollars, and
Yeah.
so I do think it is incumbent upon us to be thoughtful about where we spend our money.
Mhm.
I guess I just wanna say is, and the systems are set up so that we do have limited choices, right?
Yeah.
Capitalism creates through this cannibalization that happens where you have fewer and fewer choices, and
Mhm.
most of the choices have varying degrees of bad, but almost all of them have bad. There
Yeah.
are really
Yeah.
not corporations that because they don't exist out of the system. They are a
Yeah.
part of the system. Again, I am not talking about our businesses, small businesses, mom and pop kind of businesses.
We're
That's a
talking about
different
million
story.
billion-dollar businesses
The corporations, these chains, these national, global sorts of entities, they
with
are
political power.
yeah, and they are what capitalism is. And all of them have to play the game to get to where they are. You just don't become even Costco, which has better, quote unquote, better
Yeah.
politics. They still play the game. They are still
Yeah.
finding ways to get loopholes to pay less than their fair share of taxes.
Yeah.
They have to be.
They
They
have
are
to be in order to
extracting,
increase.
they're buying from people from, China and places in Indonesia and places where they're not paying people living wages. Like, you just can't advance to the place that any of these big corporations we're talking about gets you without extraction, without playing the
Yeah.
game, without
Yeah.
causing real harm. And giving money to MAGA is definitely one of those. And I think that's great.
But it's not the
Let's
only way.
yeah, I think that's just the piece that gets missing. It's like everyone gets laser focused on Target for, taking down their LGBT stuff during Pride. I think that's yes. Like, there's no but, but there's the and just because Walmart didn't do that doesn't mean that it's necessarily a better alternative to Target when you look at where their product sourcing
Yeah.
comes from,
Yeah.
the way they pay their employees, how they treat their employees, all the things that they're doing. It's all these corporations are guilty. They're all guilty, period. Right.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I think, yes, boycott Target, boycott Wendy's, unfollow Wendy's, do the things that you can. Just know that anytime you're shopping with any of these corporations, you are in contributing to the system. And
Yeah.
I don't blame you. It's not your fault. We all have to do that.
Yeah.
There are reasons why I might have to shop at Walmart. In many places, it is the only place
It's the only place to go.
McDonald's might be your only choice, or you might be in a place where there's only a Wendy's. And if you need to eat and you don't have money to
Yeah.
go get groceries or whatever the
Go
reason
to
is,
fucking Wendy's and get some food.
I think that should, like, yes, when we have the choice, but I think the part that gets often overlooked is there's a great deal of privilege, first of all, in many of these boycotts that don't get looked at. And then it becomes like, not only am I now canceling Wendy's, but I'm canceling you if you ever talk about go to whatever a Wendy's
Mhm.
without
Mhm.
understanding any of the reasons. And these boycotts don't really address the systemic, bigger umbrella issue of capitalism and late stage capitalism that affect every place that
Yeah.
many of these people who are boycotting shop. And they want to sort of other themselves. And listen, again, I've unfollowed Wendy's.
I'll challenge that. I think when we're talking about boycotts, like I think we also have to just be really clear about what kinds of boycotts we're talking about because there's organized boycotts, right? That do in their own way challenge the system and create some incremental kind of progress, which
For
is all
sure.
we can hope for because we can't live outside of the fucking system to begin with, like you said, right?
Exactly.
But then there's also just like unorganized boycotts,
Would
unstructured boycotts that
definitely
just
the
kind of
Wendy's.
go nowhere.
Yeah.
So like where someone just screams out into the social media void, this person or this company and 1,000 people are all of a sudden boycotting. Well, 5,000 people in the face of $1 billion corporation, right? Like that they're not going to feel that, right? But I think in terms of having to live within the system, I think, and we've talked about this before, where it's like, well, if everything is bad, then what's the point, right? Like, and I think having these kinds of conversations and like having to remind ourselves that like no corporation, no place is actually safe for us, right? To spend our money in can become overwhelming. And so I just want us to remind ourselves that, like, we're not responsible for all of it either, right? Like, we work with what we know within the means and capacity that we have. So if you have the means and capacity to boycott Wendy's or Target or whoever, then go for it, right? Make that decision for yourself. Don't spend the next 72 hours researching every single fucking company that you purchase from to try to figure out which ones you should be spending your money in and which ones you shouldn't, right? Like, first of all, nobody has time to do that. Nobody I know has time to do that anyway. As you learn about things, as things come to light, then make informed decisions, right? And that's not to say that you should be willfully ignorant of where you're spending your money and what's going on in the world, but there's a balance between like understanding that you really don't have it in you to like do the exact amount of research necessary to make an informed decision every single time you have to make a decision versus understanding that when you can make that informed decision, go ahead and make that informed decision and don't just be like, well, I'm just going to, do whatever. And so I think those two things, they can coexist.
Exactly. Well, we totally agree. The only thing I was trying to say is what gets my goat a little is when people then start to get a little holier than thou about it. Because it's like, sure, you've done a great job of boycotting Target. Good on you. And I haven't shopped in Target in 2 years plus.
Mhm.
So me too.
Mm.
And though I can acknowledge that just because I don't shop there, sometimes I have to go to, wherever. I don't
Yeah.
know. Amazon,
Yeah.
if I don't buy, for example, I have all these damn birthday parties for these kids, okay, that my kid goes to. And every time you got to bring a gift. And most of them right now, it's Legos. There are only so many places I can buy Legos. And if you've
Yeah.
taken Target off, I don't shop at Walmart. If I can't go to Amazon, like I run out of places I can even buy
Yeah.
Legos. There's not a place locally. At some point, I just got to buy the damn Lego kit for the kid for the birthday because I don't want to deny the kid. I don't want to show up and say, hey, kid, you didn't get your birthday gift because I'm boycotting everywhere because all
Yeah.
corporations are bad. So don't act holier than thou when I say I have to buy the Lego kit for the birthday party because this kid deserves a present and I had to buy it from somewhere,
Yeah.
right? And don't act as though because I didn't buy it or because, and you're like whoever this mysterious person is, in your example, just because you didn't buy it at Target, but you ended up buying it at Amazon or Walmart or wherever you bought it, unless you bought it from a mom and pop shop. And even if you did, Lego is a giant corporation that has its own, like you're not exempt. None of us are exempt because we're
Mhm.
participating in one boycott. We're
Mhm.
doing one thing. We all have to make these choices inside of these systems. So none of us, yes, boycott, do the things you can do. Absolutely. We should all be doing that. And let's honor the fact that no one is perfect inside of these
Yeah.
flawed systems. We
Yeah.
all are making imperfect choices all the time.
Yeah.
And that's okay. It's because there isn't an alternative. We don't live in an alternative universe where that stuff doesn't exist, right? And so I get frustrated by the online space that
Yeah.
really boils this stuff down to a really simplistic, well, I don't shop at Target and I don't shop at Chick-fil-A and I don't shop wherever the
Yeah.
things are. And then anyone who does is like below me. They're not doing
Yeah.
enough. They're not good enough. They're not, and they don't know any of the reasons why that person might. And even if that
Yeah.
isn't the case,
Yeah, you don't know
are
that
they
person's situation.
and are they doing their own introspection to still notice all the places they're still participating?
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
still a
Yeah.
part of it. We
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
are.
We
So
all live in a glass house. Nobody should be throwing stones.
exactly.
Nobody should be throwing stones. But when you brought up the Wendy thing, the Wendy's, the Wendy's, when you brought up the Wendy's thing, it made me, think about like I have to constantly remind myself that, like, just because someone is a shitty person with like shitty values and ethics does not necessarily mean that they're shitty at what they do or have no skills or talent whatsoever. Right.
Right. And by the way, the social media manager for Wendy's is probably just a really talented person who
Yeah.
wants a
Probably
decent
some
job that gives their
20
kids
old.
gives themselves health care, pays them a living wage.
Yeah.
They get to have a little fun at work. We don't know the person's politics or whatever.
Yeah.
Boy, are they having a real rough week now because of all
God,
of
I
this.
feel for them.
Ultimately, because of what? Like, how many of the same people, by the way, who have all the stuff to say are working for corporations that are just as bad,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
we can't help what our employer does. And so, yeah, like I can hate Wendy's. I could hate Dave Thomas. He's dead now, but whoever owns Wendy's, like, I can
Yeah.
be like, oh, yeah, don't give to
The
MAGA,
Thomas
whatever.
family.
But it's really not the social media manager's fault. And I mean,
Yeah.
we find out they're also MAGA, but They're probably just a young kid trying to like make their way in
Yep.
the world.
Yeah.
And by the way, they're really talented. They're really
Yeah.
talented
Probably
at what
with
they
like
do.
6 roommates or
Exactly.
still living at home because they can't
Because
afford their
Wendy's
own
probably
place in this
doesn't pay them
economy.
enough. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, I totally agree with you because like that whoever they are, kudos to them because they do a really bang up. I mean, they are one of the most
So
impressive.
good.
Yeah, what they do. And I can
Yeah.
still,
So
so there's
good.
the, and I can say your employer sucks and I can honor that you're really good at your job. And even if I not find out that person is MAGA, I don't have to follow them, but I can honor that like your politics
You're good at
suck.
your job.
You're
Yeah.
horrible and you're really good at what you do.
Yeah. 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 I mean, it always, things like that always bring to mind like the JKRs of the world, right?
Ugh,
Like, you're a
exactly.
horrible human being,
Built amazing worlds.
but you built this entire world that is going to outlive you forever and ever because
I mean,
you're
we could do that with
brilliant with words.
a million artists. I mean, P. Diddy, I don't like his music, but some people do, right? And like
Yeah.
Michael Jackson and
R.
I'm trying to think
Kelly,
I know, now I'm like, I needed some white examples
non-black.
because I know, I'm like, wait a minute.
Who
But
are
I
the
mean, there's a
country
million of them.
artists who are assholes? Like,
I just don't
I don't
pay
listen to country music, so I don't know.
well, exactly, riddled with them. Jason
Yeah.
Aldean, I don't even know who
Yeah.
they are, but yeah, like you can like somebody's work. Picasso. I mean,
Yeah.
there are plenty of examples throughout history where we find out at some point in their creative journey that they're a piece of shit,
Yeah.
and we can honor that their work they were still talented.
Yeah. Like, who's the blonde who performed at the inauguration? Country singer, American Idol girl?
Carrie Underwood.
Carrie Underwood. Yeah. Phenomenal singer.
Guess so.
But you're kissing that guy's ass? Really?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. I was going to share one thing. Okay, we can't have commentary on it. I just wanted to say Bridgerton, which I don't watch. Did you? Okay,
The trailer?
they're adding a queer romance to the next season. I thought you might be excited about that. I wasn't sure if you were a viewer or not, but that's been very big
I
news.
am a viewer, and that's the build up to that has been several seasons already. So
You already knew it was coming.
yes, already knew it was coming. Didn't know when.
Literally and figuratively it was coming. But anyway, that's pretty big news apparently. It's been all over the feeds that Bridgerton is going to have a queer romance. So good for them.
Yes.
2 women, 2 men.
2 women, Michaela and Francesca.
Okay.
So in the original book series, it's Michael and Francesca.
Well, good for them for
Shonda
making that.
Rhimes, yeah, they decided to turn that character from a man into a woman.
I love it.
Yes.
I love that. Well, we've had the heated rivalry thing, and now we get to have a sapphic version of it, which is fantastic because
Yeah.
there needs to be more of that. So,
And they're mixed race.
I mean, listen, Shonda, you're hitting on all
You
the
might be
things.
watching Bridgerton next season, is what you're
Is
saying?
one of them disabled or neurodivergent or anything too?
Yes. Yes.
Fantastic.
Just hitting all the marks.
Shonda's like, I'm going to hit each of the points. I love it. Well, I wanted to end on a good note, so I just wanted to say that.
Yeah.
So, yay, we celebrate the Shonda and yay for Bridgerton.
Thank you. Thank you.
Exactly. We need more of that in the world and a lot less of all the other stuff.
Yeah.
Have a lovely day.
You as well.
Thanks for listening to Messy Liberation.
Thank you so much for your support and for listening today.
Until next time.